is 1:30 exactly. We've got 15 bills on the calendar. We've got this room for 30 minutes. So, for all the presenters and all the questioners, be governed accordingly. Call the first bill, House Bill 302. Randy Nix. Sit. You've already used up half your time.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to present this House Bill 302, which is related to the requirements related to advertising and notice requirements pertaining to millage rate adoption for our governmental bodies. We worked on this last year. We've had 2 hearings. I think we've got the best language we can have now to make it clear and make it as transparent as possible for the citizens when they get a notice that their property tax is changing. And I'd be glad to answer questions. Like I said, we've had 2 subcommittee hearings and had testimony there.
This is just a change in the verbiage in the notice requirement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there questions of the author? What number are you, Chuck? Okay.
I'm just having technical difficulty, or I could read the language. What was the language that the gentleman finally arrived at?
Well, the primary language is line number 29, notice of proposed property tax revenue increase. That was the one that had everybody jumping up and down, and once we go down, we still have the requirements in there that they have to have the meetings to talk about it and have to give them the rollback millage and everything, but that headline was the biggest.
Okay, just that's the language.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the committee? Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules.
Thank you very much.
All right, next, Shaw, I'm going to skip you for the time being. 352, Chuck Martin.
Yes, sir, and I'm still having technical difficulty, but number 12, Mr. Chairman.
I got you on.
Number 12, so I don't have the bill to refer to line numbers, but what this specifically seeks to do is to exempt from the electronic vehicle, the EV fee, the $200 fee, low speed vehicles and personal transportation vehicles. I have a definition, but basically, Mr. Chairman, those are vehicles that require a tag but go below 25 miles an hour and a distance measured from 1 mile on a flat surface.
Are we talking golf carts?
Yes, sir. I would maybe just glorified golf carts, if you will. They're a little more expensive than that, but you would not see they couldn't be driven on the interstate. They wouldn't be safe really to be on a state highway. These are just things around the neighborhood.
How many are in the state, according to your knowledge?
As best the Revenue Department can give me numbers on right now, a little over 500.
They're more than that, but 500 have to be licensed or permitted.
That is correct. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Any questions of the author? What's the pleasure of the committee? All right, motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes on the rules.
Mr. Chairman, I know we're about, but I wanted to thank Josh Bonner, Representative Bonner. It really helped me a lot on the bill, and I wanted to give him proper thanks here in front of the committee.
Okay. All right, next, Sam Teasley, House Bill 664.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 664, which would take the state income tax deduction for filers married and filing jointly and individuals from $2,000 and $4,000 currently to $4,000 and $8,000 for those who contribute to a child's 529 college savings plan. As I began to do the research on this issue a number of years ago, learned that Georgia had fallen well behind what other states are doing in terms of incentivizing contributions to 529 savings plans. So we expanded that from $2,000 to $4,000 if married filing jointly, and this would take that to $4,000 and $8,000. And the most common incentive that are in other states is $5,000 and $10,000. So this would again improve the incentive for our taxpayers, but at the same time still put us a little bit below what other states are doing.
Are there questions of the author? Seeing none, what's the will of the committee? There's a motion to pass in a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules. House Bill 690, Jason Ridley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My House Bill was 690. It was the leasing bill that we passed last year. The only thing we're doing on this, if you look on line 12, is just adding the words "or used" to make used vehicle leases the same taxable as new car leases are.
Are there questions of the author? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules.
Thanks, sir.
House Bill 693, Brett Harrell. Is Brett here? All right, we'll come back to it, assuming we're still here. House Bill 697, Darlene Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you today House Bill 697, where we had met in subcommittee, agreed, and this is a sunsetting tax exemption for the community health centers, and we needed a little bit more time to get some more documentation, so we're going to extend it for just 1 year, and we appreciate your consideration of this bill.
All right, are there questions of the author? What's the pleasure of the committee? There's a motion and a second to pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules.
Thank you.
House Bill 735, Patty Bentley. Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, I bring to you House Bill 735, which creates an income tax credit for expenditures on the maintenance of railroad tracks owned or leased by a Class 3 or short line railroad company. This bill comes directly from the House Rural Development Council, and it mirrors the structure of the now expired federal 45G rail tax credit program. I'm just going to pause there for a moment to see if there's any questions or after we've.
Representative Williamson.
For the committee votes, Representative, I just want to publicly thank you for your hard work on this initiative and what it means to rural Georgia, and just like to publicly commend you.
Thank you,
And
because
I
it
move
certainly
to
will.
pass.
Thank you, because this will certainly be something to help rural Georgia. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman Williamson.
Didn't you used to be a tenor? Why are you a bass today? We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? All right, there's a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, next is House Bill 749, Shaw Blackman. Where are you, Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 749, working off LC 345314S, and this bill would assist our military retirees and some exemptions from income tax. It also designates that military retirement is also exempt, consistent with our current retirement exemptions.
All right, are there questions of the author? What's the fiscal note? There's no fiscal note on the first part. What's the fiscal note on the second part?
It is a low of 1.2 million and a high of 5.3 million.
Okay. Any other questions? What's the will of the committee? There's a motion and a second. Do pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules. House Bill 792, Terry Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 792, all we're doing in this bill, the hazardous waste fee sunset, it ends July 1st, I guess, or June 30th, 2018. We're just extending the sunset for 1 year.
Are there questions of the author? What's the will of the committee? There's a motion second to pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules.
Thank you.
House Bill 793, Dominic LaRicchia.
Of the committee. This is a sales and use tax exemption for the Georgia Aquarium. Historically, we've done that on construction materials when they do a big expansion. They're fixing to do a $100 million Predator Marine Life expansion. I think it's on line 15. You'll see where the effective date and sunset date changes from 15 to 18, and the sunset date from I think it's 18 to 22 is the year that it will sunset. And on line 17, you'll see a $4.5 million cap change from $750,000. So that's what we're doing. We're just moving that sunset and changing the cap because this is a much bigger expansion.
Are there questions of the author?
Who is the they? I mean, is it the aquarium now? Is it a nonprofit group?
501c3. It's still the Georgia Aquarium.
And so it's the they that would be buying it would be the aquarium, not
The
particular
aquarium
contractor.
is the purchaser.
All right, so the aquarium is going to buy the construction materials, or other contractors buy them? And
Well, the contractors may buy those and the sales tax are paid, but the aquarium has to do a sales tax refund to the Department of Revenue to get that back.
any other questions? What's the will of the committee? All right, there's a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules. Micah Gravely, House Bill 816.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In order to be in compliance with the new IRS regulations, Department of Revenue Commissioner Lynn Riley has requested that the department have the capability of being able to perform and conduct a national background check with fingerprints on employees, future employees, and contractors.
All right, are there questions of the author? This is basically a department bill, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, there's a motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Moves on to rules.
Thank you.
House Bill 827, Trey Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have House Bill 827 before you today, which is the changes that we're making to the rural hospital tax credit bill that we've worked on the last couple years. We saw that we had put a $60 million cap last year. Only $9 million in credits got claimed, and there was a couple reasons. One, we felt like we needed to move the rate from a 90% credit to a 100% credit to drive more investment. And I want to thank Representative Rhodes. I know this has been an issue that they've dealt with over there, along with the pass-through entities being able to take advantage of the credit as well. So he worked with us on that, and appreciate his help there. So we did that. We've also tiered the system so that for the first 6 months, an individual or head of household can claim up to $5,000. In the case of a married couple filing jointly, $10,000, or the pass-through entity, $10,000. But after that initial 6 months, if credits are still unclaimed, we want investment in this program, and so we would allow anyone to remove those limits after that time. I'm going to ask the committee to make one change, Mr. Chairman, on line 51.
Got a new LC number.
All right, we have a new LC number that should be on your iPads, LC 4308550ERS. And what it does is on line 51, we'd insert the line annual after shall the annual aggregate amount of tax credits allowable. In no event shall the annual aggregate amount exceed 60 million, and we removed the language that referenced 2017, 2018, and 2019 because we moved the sunset to 2000.
Read the actual language in the LC.
The language on the LC is, in no event shall the aggregate amount of tax credits allowed under this code section exceed 60 million per taxable year. And that's the one change, and that makes it consistent with the sunset that we've put in place here. That would be the one change, and I'd ask the committee's favorable support.
All right, are there questions? 17. Debbie Butler.
There was a question today in the hometown health meeting about whether or not S corporations had been put in there, and I just wanted to certify that that did indeed get added.
Yes, that is in there. All the S corps, LLCs, all your pass-through entities are put in the bill, and that was something that was certainly a priority when making these revisions.
Thank you.
Okay, 28.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I just wanted to thank Representative Kelly for getting this through, and I wanted to remind the crowd that if any of y'all want to help rural and kind of keep the rural push going, we've got a few names of some hospitals that you can give it to, so just give us a call.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments from the committee? All right, what is the pleasure of the committee? And we are operating off of LC 430-850 ERS. All right, there's a motion. There's a second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes on to rules. HR 238, Sam Watson.
Chairman, members of the committee, I bring before you HR 238. This is a constitutional amendment to allow the voters of Georgia to allow up to 75% of the sales tax collected off recreational items to be used for land conservation, wildlife protection, land acquisition, conservation, and so forth. I'd appreciate your support.
Are there questions? All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? Motion is second to do pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moves on to rules. All right, I'm going to ask Representative Harrell can't make it evidently. I'm going to ask Representative Kelly if he will to present HB 693.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 693 is a measure that Representative Harrell brought that would prevent the use of liens to be used to collect trash fees by municipal governments.
Are there questions? What's the pleasure of the committee?
So moved.
Motion is second do pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moves on to rules. All right, HB 741 that was offered by John Corbett has been removed from the calendar. We've got two remaining items on the calendar. I wanted to save enough time that if there were questions from the committee that there'd be ample time to discuss those. The first of those is HB 327, Shaw Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Working off LC 288709S, and this bill is largely similar and has many of the same provisions as House Bill 340 from last session that passed unanimously out of this committee and our House with only 3 dissenting votes. I will try to go over the provisions that have changed that are worthy of noting. The Welcome to Georgia provision we have changed to include a 3% reduction in TAVT for those moving into the state. The redistribution from the state to the locals has been phased in over 2 additional years. We have added a provision to preserve the historical ability of commercial leasing to to handle TAVT the way they have been in the past. Thanks to Chairman Martin, we have closed the loophole on the gaming by going to retail instead of the greater of, and we have also dropped the effective rate from 7% to 6.75%. Now that includes elimination of the 9% automatic trigger, which is hundreds of millions of dollars of potential tax increase that we would not have oversight of. I think also worth noting is the fact that we did pass the leasing provision in last year's HB 340, and we also, at the request of the department, moved the start date back to no later than July 1st of 2019. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to try to take any questions.
All right, Chairman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the gentleman's continued giving me credit for something. I'm not sure that's due.
You're welcome.
Just to be clear, and I do sincerely appreciate the gentleman's work. I mean, what I tried to espouse was that I thought it was important for people to know exactly what they were paying on, and it was important for us to, if we go retail to retail or book to book, and we didn't let the number be switched around. You know, the intent was not to, you know, increase what anyone was paying, but I think new car is, I guess I don't see the chairman over there because there's heads in the way, but I believe I'm truthful when I say this, that, you know, in the new car situation, the idea is you pay TAVT on the dollars you spend, and that's what we were trying to come to, and that's what we came to in this. So again, I wasn't trying to make it tougher on anybody, but to have the consumers know exactly what they were spending. And I would also be fair that the gentleman has listened to me, and the subcommittee didn't go in that direction, but I still believe that people that have a casual sale, you know, should be treated exactly the same way, so that they only pay on the money that's spent. I understand there's difficulty in tracking that, and we haven't gone that way, but it would be our hope my hope in the future that we could get to that, so all people in Georgia that transact a vehicle are treated the same way. I believe that's the gentleman's intent here. Thank you. You have done a lot of work, and you are generous to give credit, but you've done the work on it, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I mean that genuinely, though. I think you did help us improve the legislation.
All right, any other comments? Any other kumbaya? I do want to congratulate you. You have worked hard the last 2 years, and especially on the distribution part, that nobody could figure out how to make it work. You have made it work, and you are to be congratulated because you've stuck with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What's the pleasure of the committee? All right, there's a motion, second, do pass. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moves on to rules. Thank you, sir. We have one other little cleanup bill, revenue and taxation. Chuck Effestration.
I bring before you House Bill 821. It's a committee substitute that I present to you. This bill includes the 2017 tax year IRC update. It also includes a TAVT exemption for vehicles that are 15 years or older and in cases where the title has been lost. The bill also includes the jet fuel tax exemption. Georgia currently has the fourth highest jet fuel sales tax of the 21 states with major hub airports. North Carolina and Texas have zero. This is a competitiveness issue for the state of Georgia as well as an economic development issue. This bill was reviewed extensively in 2 subcommittee hearings by the members that are in here and has been discussed extensively. Would ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, if there are any comments, I just ask to reserve the remainder of my comments to conclude, if that would be acceptable.
That'll be fine. And when you say there were 2 subcommittee hearings, unlike our typical rule of 2 subcommittee hearings where it is heard by the same subcommittee twice, because this had components of income tax and components of sales tax, we had a subcommittee hearing in each so that 2 different subcommittees got to hear this bill. And I want to thank you for your work in presenting this to the committee and in answering their questions, and the questions you couldn't answer, and go and finding out the information so that you could convey it back to the committee. Representative Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the gentleman, thank you for bringing this legislation. Is it not true that this committee substitute limited the income tax features to the 2017 IRC update as it marries up to the existing tax returns and obligations to file our 2017 tax returns for Georgia? Is that not true?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And furthermore, is it not true that any exemption on jet fuel or jet fuel A will apply to the entire state of Georgia, regardless of whomever purchases that? Is that not true?
That's correct. Jet fuel pumped into a plane, passengers or cargo, or irrespective. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
16, who's 16? Representative Trammell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While it applies statewide, isn't it true that it has an outsized impact on one of the 159 counties, that being Clayton County?
Mr. Leader, I appreciate you bringing that up. And just to provide some context here, this has been an ongoing issue where Clayton County has been notified that sales taxes being collected locally in Clayton County are in violation of federal regulation, and that corrective action needed to be taken so that the entire state of Georgia did not lose federal funding for aviation and airports. And further, to provide some additional context here, this is not impacting the personal property taxes collected by Clayton County from businesses that operate at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. In fact, according to the Clayton County 2017 Annual Financial Report, the county's top 10 property taxpayers are number 1, Delta Airlines, number 3, Southwest Airlines, number 4, American Airlines, number 5, the City of Atlanta, and number 8, ExpressJet Airlines, all related to operations at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, Atlanta International Airport. And that is not being impacted by this whatsoever. So Clayton County will continue to collect tax revenue from the airport. And finally, it's come to my attention that knowing some of this, and I have not had a chance to independently confirm this, but knowing some of this, Clayton County has even held some of the revenues received in escrow, anticipating that there would be action coming. So they knew about this, knew that this was coming, and have even attempted to take corrective steps, at least with regard to the lost provisions. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to detail this further as necessary, but I'd be happy to reserve my comments to conclude as needed.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a follow-up question. Isn't it true, though, that the FAA regulation that you're citing and saying that Clayton County is in violation of, that issue is presently teed up in litigation for the 11th Circuit for a hearing in March, and that passage of this legislation would have the effect of mooting the decision that would be in front of the 11th Circuit?
Mr. Leader, it is my understanding that when confronted with this and after years of being notified, Clayton County, instead of taking corrective action, decided to litigate or file to the 11th Circuit for review, and that is pending right now. But you are correct that this would address that underlying issue, certainly with respect to jet fuel sales tax, if this House Bill 821 were to be passed.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask one final question, just for the sales tax impact that we're talking about on Clayton County for the 1 cent E-Splosh and the 1 cent loss, that's $18 million a year. Is that right?
That's correct. The Clayton County, I think will acknowledge it's undisputed that Clayton County imposed local option sales tax after 1987, which, as members of this committee well know, is then subject to federal regulation, rules, and restrictions. It's because of that you're citing this. But what I cited before, personal property taxes collected by Clayton County will continue if this is passed. There was a comment that, well, I'll reserve on that, but I think the point to acknowledge is that Clayton County has been made aware of this year after year, and has continued to collect and decided to litigate rather than address the corrective action that was needed.
Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on a couple of comments, the IRC update, and again for clarification, the updates in this bill regarding the Internal Revenue Code are needed, and this is what we pass every year so that the changes can be codified in law, and that those changes immediately need to go and be signed so that they can then be dispersed back out to the tax preparers or the tax software folks who have the tax software that we are using to prepare the returns that we're doing right now. So there is a sense of urgency regarding this as the IRC update. I will remind on the second part, as far as the issue with Clayton County, I'll remind the members of this committee that in the past, this body has passed 2 bills in regards to, and the governor has signed them. The legislature, the legislative branch and the executive branch have had 2 bills regarding this particular county regarding taxes. And their attitude has been to absolutely will litigate. We don't like what the legislature has done, but we'll litigate, and to continue with activities that are clearly against the law. So I'll you know, as far as that litigation, this body sets state law, and I think that's what we were elected to come up here and do, is to make state law, not to let the courts decide what it is. Thank you.
Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative. Thank you, Chairman Knight, for your comments. I just need to better understand, because I know there's a lot of people here from Clayton County. How do we really address the issue with Clayton County losing tax revenue? Because that's one of the main concerns that I've heard here recently, and how this is going to drastically impact the school system being able to do the things they need to do for the children of Clayton County.
Well, I would begin by saying that this is no surprise or no new issue right now. The talking points that are being used to try to advance that argument, we challenge and take very much issue with. We don't believe that the facts are as what has been stated, or portions of what has been stated specifically in subcommittee. And it's difficult for me to respond without hearing what exactly that is. But I can tell you that the top taxpayers in Clayton County, as I cited, are paying the top property taxpayers are related to the airport, and that will continue. That will not be impacted by House Bill 821.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious, for some of our smaller carriers, since I live in Savannah, and ticket prices there can be relatively expensive going anywhere. By leveling the playing field for sales tax across the board here, do you see an increased a benefit to the consumer?
Absolutely, and as testimony has been offered in subcommittee, that fuel costs are the second highest expense for the air carriers, and that there would be an opportunity to reduce ticket prices for consumers as a result of passing House Bill 821, as well as providing great economic development benefit for the state of Georgia.
Thank you.
Representative Kelly, and we're going to sort of wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out that through our subcommittees, we heard testimony that the only services that Clayton County provides are some very minimal court services where individuals may get in trouble with the law at the airport. That's the only time they ever provide any services to the airport. And the more I just hear this, all I think about is the old saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And Clayton County's got to have this money for a long time, and they probably shouldn't have ever been doing with it what they're doing now. So they should be just happy that they had it for when they did. And at that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just make a motion.
What's your motion?
Do pass.
All right, there's a motion, a second. Do pass. Or are there any other discussion? Representative Trammell.
Mr. Chairman, I think the questions I ask allude to this, but fundamentally the question before this committee is whether or not we'll pass a policy that will have an outsized impact on one of our 159 counties. And the type of impact that it will have will be on school kids, the operation of safety of Clayton County residents, and it's just a fundamental fairness issue. This issue is teed up. If the FAA exemption, if the court rules that Clayton County isn't authorized to collect the tax, the court can rule that. But if this bill passes this General Assembly, they lose their day in court.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, motion's on the table. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? No. The ayes have it, and the bill passes on to rules. And there's no other business to come before this committee. We are adjourned 6 minutes late.